By sundown, the men who laughed at Abigail Whitaker's face would remember the bruise less than the cowboy who made them answer for laughing. Mercy Creek, Colorado Territory, 1878, lay under a hard white afternoon sun, the kind that turned every window on Main Street into a watching eye. Dust rolled beneath wagon wheels, horses stamped near the livery, and the saloon doors swung open just as the eastbound stagecoach groaned to a stop in front of the Mercantile. Abby stepped down last, holding a worn brown valise close against her side, as if the little bag contained not dresses and papers, but the last pieces of herself. She was 23, white, soft and chubby in a faded gray calico dress that had been let out at the seams by her own careful hand. A high collar covered most of her neck, and her chestnut hair was pinned under a plain bonnet, but nothing could hide the fading mark along one cheek or the shadow near her eye. She kept her gaze lowered, not because she was weak, but because every town had a way of deciding what a woman's pain meant before she had a chance to speak. Inside the valise, wrapped beneath a patched petticoat and her mother's handkerchief, sat a small tin box with a broken ribbon tied around it. Abby's fingers never left the handle. That box was the reason she had come west, the reason she had not turned back, and the reason Jasper Hale would follow once he realized she had taken proof instead of permission. All Abby needed was directions to the sheriff's office and perhaps a piece of bread if she could spare the coin. She had taken only 3 steps toward the Mercantile when laughter broke from the saloon porch. Silas Brandt, broad-bellied and red-faced, leaned against a post with a glass in one hand and 2 idle men beside him. His eyes fixed on Abby's cheek with the greedy brightness of a man who liked another person's shame because it cost him nothing. "Well now," he called, loud enough for the street to hear, "looks like the stage brought us trouble wrapped in calico." One of the men snickered. Another made a show of touching his own face. Abby's grip tightened until the valise handle pressed deep into her palm. She kept walking. The Mercantile door was only 20 feet away. 20 feet could feel like a mile when every boardwalk creak seemed to carry judgment. "Do not be shy, miss," Silas said. "A face like that usually comes with a story." Abby stopped because her legs did, not because she wanted to. Heat rose under her collar. She had promised herself she would not cry in this town, not before strangers, not before men who turned wounds into entertainment. The sheriff's office stood at the end of the street, but between her and that door were dust, laughter, and the terrible weight of being seen only where she had been hurt. A final laugh rose from the porch, sharper than the others. Then it stopped. A shadow crossed the street from the livery. Abby saw boots first, then worn leather chaps, a dark blue shirt, a brown vest, and a Stetson pulled low over a sun-browned face. The cowboy was tall, broad-shouldered, and still in a way that made the air around him tighten. He did not look at Abby's bruise the way others had. He looked at the men laughing at it. Then Cole Maddox stepped between her and the saloon porch, his back to Abby, his voice low enough to be calm and strong enough to empty the street of sound. "Laugh again," he said, "and answer to me." The silence that followed Cole Maddox's words did not feel peaceful. It felt like the moment before a storm decides which direction to break. Silas Brandt straightened from the saloon post, his grin still on his face, but no longer comfortable. The 2 men beside him found sudden interest in the dust near their boots. Abby stood behind the cowboy's shoulder, her valise pressed against her ribs, her breath caught so tightly it made the fading bruise near her cheek seem to pulse with heat. She had not asked for help. Asking had been dangerous in Jasper Hale's house. Kindness there had always come with a ledger, a condition, or a door closing behind her. But Cole did not turn around to inspect her fear. He kept his attention on the men who had caused it. "Now, Maddox," Silas said, lifting both hands as if the whole thing had been a harmless church social, "no need to take offense. We were only having a little fun." Cole's jaw tightened. Beneath the shadow of his Stetson. "Find your fun somewhere that does not make a woman smaller." The words were plain, not shouted, and because they were not shouted, they carried even farther. A woman outside the Mercantile stopped pretending to arrange a basket of apples. The stagecoach driver leaned one elbow on the rail and watched. Somewhere down the street, a horse snorted and stamped. Silas let out a short laugh, but it fell flat before it reached anyone else. You always were touchy about strays. Cole took one step closer to the saloon porch. He did not reach for the revolver at his hip. He did not need to. His stillness did more than anger could have done. Apologize. The word landed like a weight on the boards. Silas's face darkened. To her. To Miss Whitaker. Abby's heart jolted. He knew her name. She realized then that the stage driver must have said it when unloading the baggage, or perhaps Cole had read the careful black letters on the side of her valise. Either way, hearing her name spoken with respect in the same place where men had laughed at her face nearly made her knees weaken. Silas looked past Cole toward her, and Abby fought the instinct to lower her eyes. For one breath, she met the man's stare. He looked away first. No offense meant, Miss Whitaker, he muttered. Cole did not move until the words were finished. Then he turned slightly, not enough to expose her to the porch again, only enough for his voice to reach her. Would you like the doctor, the sheriff, or the boarding house? Abby stared at him. No one had offered her 3 choices in longer than she could remember. Jasper gave orders. Strangers gave opinions. Men in towns gave looks. Cole Maddox gave options and waited, as if waiting were a form of respect. Her fingers tightened around the valise handle. The tin box inside seemed suddenly heavier. I only need directions, she said. Her voice came out rough from disuse. To the sheriff. Cole nodded once. Sheriff's office is at the end of the street, past the blacksmith. I can walk. Yes, ma'am. He stepped aside just enough to clear a path, but not so far that the men on the porch could reach her with their laughter. Again. Abby took one step, then another. The world did not tilt. No one called out. She could feel Cole walking several feet behind her, close enough to discourage cruelty, far enough not to trap her. That distance confused her more than if he had grabbed her arm. At the Mercantile, an older woman opened the door and glanced at Abby's face with pity so soft it felt almost worse than mockery. Abby turned away. Pity could become gossip before supper. The sheriff's office was small, with a flag hanging limp beside the door and a brass bell nailed above the frame. Abby paused outside it, suddenly aware that once she entered, the story would no longer belong only to her. Jasper's name would be spoken. The tin box would have to be explained. Her mother's letter, the bank receipt, the signature he said was worthless, all of it would come out under eyes that might or might not believe her. Her hand shook against the latch. Cole stopped at the edge of the porch, leaving her the doorway. You can say no, he said. Abby turned back, startled. To the sheriff? To anything. The answer was so simple that she almost did not trust it. She looked at his face then, really looked. He was older than she had first thought, mid-30s perhaps, with sun-darkened skin, brown eyes steady beneath the brim of his hat, and lines at the corners of his mouth that came from weather more than smiling. A dangerous-looking man, yes. But his danger was turned outward, away from her. Why would a man like you help a woman like me? She asked. Cole's expression changed, not much, but enough for grief to pass behind his eyes like a shadow crossing a window. Because someone should have helped before the Bruises. The words settled between them. Abby's breath caught, and for the first time since stepping off the stagecoach, the shame in her chest shifted into something else. Not trust. Not yet. But the smallest suspicion that perhaps the bruise on her face did not tell the story men wanted it to tell. Before she could answer, the telegraph bell inside the sheriff's office clicked sharply. The deputy at the desk looked up from a yellow slip being handed through the side window. Message from Ridgeland, he called toward the back room. Name here says Abigail Whitaker. Abby went cold. Cole heard it too. The deputy read the words aloud before anyone could stop him. Hold Abigail Whitaker. Theft and debt claim. Jasper Hale arriving by evening stage. The street outside seemed to fall away. Abby's hand clutched the valise so hard the tin box inside knocked against the frame. Cole's gaze moved from the telegram to her white knuckles, then back to her face. He did not ask if it was true. He only stepped down from the porch and placed himself between Abby and the staring street once more. Then we had better make sure the sheriff hears her side before Jasper Hale gets to town. Sheriff Daniel Rusk was not in his office when the telegram arrived, only Deputy Martin Cole sitting behind the desk with ink on his fingers and surprise on his face. The deputy read the message twice after Cole Maddox told him to read it again, and Abby stood near the door with her valise pressed to her skirt, feeling every board in the room tilt toward suspicion. Theft and debt claim. Jasper Hale arriving by evening stage. The words were short enough to fit on a yellow slip of paper, but they carried the weight of every locked drawer, every signed paper, every time Jasper had told her that a woman without a father should be grateful for a man willing to manage her affairs. Miss Whitaker, the deputy said carefully, do you wish to make a statement before Mr. Hale arrives? Abby opened her mouth, but no sound came. Not because she had nothing to say. Because too much truth crowded the doorway at once. Her mother's letter. The missing inheritance money. The tin box. The key she had kept under the lining of her glove. Cole remained outside the office door, visible through the open frame, hat in hand, not entering until invited. The deputy glanced at him. Maddox, this is official business. Then make it official by letting her sit down, Cole said. His voice held no challenge, only the plain expectation that decency should not need permission. The deputy colored and pulled a chair forward. Abby sat on the edge, the valise across her knees like a shield. I did not steal from Jasper Hale, she said at last. The box in my bag belonged to my mother. The deputy looked toward the valise. May I see it? Her fingers tightened. The room grew smaller. Cole took one step closer to the threshold, then stopped. She can say no, he reminded them both. Abby looked down at the old leather bag. If she refused, the telegram would speak louder than she did. If she opened it, everything she had protected might be taken before she understood how to defend it. Not until the sheriff is here, she said. Her voice shook, but the words stood. Deputy Cole nodded. Fair enough. Sheriff Rusk is at the north pasture over the Miller dispute. He should be back before dusk. He looked at the mark on Abby's face, then quickly away, as if politeness had finally caught up with curiosity. You may want Dr. Bell before then. Abby almost refused out of habit. Care was another form of questioning in Jasper's house. But the heat in her cheek had become a dull ache, and the long ride had left her knees unsteady. Cole spoke from the doorway. Dr. Bell is 2 doors down. Woman doctor. Good hands. Fewer questions than most. Abby heard what he offered inside the words, not a command, not rescue, just a road with room to turn back. She rose. I will go. The doctor's office smelled of lavender soap, clean linen, and lamp oil. Dr. Miriam Bell was a silver-haired woman with sharp eyes and a voice that softened only after it understood the truth of a room. She did not gasp when Abby removed her bonnet. She did not ask who had left the fading bruise along her cheek. She simply warmed water, handed Abby a cloth, and said, You may tell me only what you choose. That sentence did more to loosen Abby's breath than any medicine could have. Cole waited outside on the boardwalk the entire time, his shadow crossing the frosted glass whenever he shifted his weight, but he never came in. Dr. Bell gave Abby a small tin of salve and wrapped it in brown paper. You need rest, food, and a door that locks from your side. Abby gave a tired smile with no humor in it. Those are rare luxuries. Not in my town if I have a say, Dr. Bell replied. Yet even. As she spoke, another telegraph boy ran past the window toward the sheriff's office, and Abby's heart sank before she knew why. By late afternoon, Deputy Cole had arranged a small room for Abby at the boarding house, but Dr. Bell's expression made it plain she did not like the arrangement. Too many ears, the doctor murmured while fastening her medical bag. Cole Maddox heard and looked toward the far end of town, where the evening stage would arrive in a few hours. My ranch is 8 miles out, he said. Abby stiffened. He saw it at once and stepped back. Not tonight if you do not want. Not ever if you do not want. But Jasper Hale will come to this street first, and every man who laughed this afternoon will know where to look. The truth of it settled cold in Abby's stomach. She took the boarding house key from the deputy anyway, because choosing one step at a time was the only courage she had. In the narrow upstairs room, she locked the door, slid a chair beneath the knob, and opened her valise on the bed. The tin box lay beneath her folded petticoat, its dull surface tied with the faded ribbon her mother had once used around letters. Abby touched it gently, then reached into her glove lining for the key. Nothing. She checked the other glove, the reticule, the seam of the valise, the pocket of her dress. Nothing. The room blurred at the edges. Without the key, the proof might as well have been buried. Below stairs, voices rose as the evening stage rolled into Mercy Creek. One of them was Jasper Hales, smooth and certain, greeting the deputy as though he had already won. Abby backed away from the bed, the locked tin box in both hands. Then a soft knock came at the door. Cole's voice sounded from the hallway, low and careful. "Miss Whitaker. Dr. Bell says you are not safe here after dark. I have a wagon out back. You can sit with the doctor if you prefer. You can keep the box. You can keep the key to your own room at my ranch. But we need to move before Hale starts telling this town who you are." Abby looked at the locked box, then at the door, and realized Jasper had arrived with a claim, but Cole had arrived with choices. Her hand shook as she lifted the chair away from the knob. "If I go," she said through the wood, "I decide when I come back." "Yes, ma'am," Cole answered. "And when you come back, you will not come back alone." They left the boarding house by the rear stairs while the town listened to Jasper Hale's voice at the front desk. Abby kept the tin box under one arm and her valise in the other hand, each step down the narrow stairwell measured and silent. Dr. Bell walked ahead with her medical bag, opening the back door just wide enough for the cool evening air to slip in. Cole Maddox waited in the alley beside a dark wagon, the team already harnessed, a blanket folded across the seat, a canteen and a small sack of bread placed within reach. He did not hurry her. That made the fear worse and better at the same time. Men who wanted control demanded speed. Cole made room for choice even when danger had a voice in the next room. Abby looked toward Main Street, where lamplight glowed in the windows and Jasper's smooth tone drifted through the boards. "He will say I ran." "He already planned to," Cole said. "Running is not the same as refusing to stand where he points." Dr. Bell helped Abby climb into the wagon, then sat beside her, solid and calm, while Cole took the reins. They did not race out of Mercy Creek. They moved steadily, taking the back road past the blacksmith, over the dry wash, and into open country as dusk settled violet across the Colorado hills. Abby held the tin box in her lap the entire ride, its locked lid pressed against her palms like a question she could not yet answer. The road to Maddox Ranch ran 8 miles through sagebrush, low cottonwoods, and grass silvered by moonrise. Cole drove without asking about Jasper, the bruise, or the missing key. Once, when the wagon hit a rut, Abby's shoulder tensed before she could stop it. Cole slowed the team at once. "Road gets rough here," he said, as if the ground were to blame and not the memory in her body. Dr. Bell glanced at Abby with quiet understanding, but did not speak. That silence was kinder than comfort. When the ranch finally appeared, Abby saw a 2-story house of weathered timber, a long porch, a stone chimney, a barn standing black against the darkening pasture, and a windmill turning slowly against the first stars. It was not grand, but it looked steady. A lamp burned in the kitchen window. Another glowed near the barn. The place seemed prepared for work, not welcome, yet it did not feel cruel. Cole pulled the wagon to a stop near the porch. "This is Maddox Ranch," he said. "You have a room upstairs. It locks from the inside. Dr. Bell can stay the night if that eases you." Dr. Bell nodded. "I already intended to." Abby looked at Cole, surprised. "You asked her?" "I asked if she had patients who could wait until morning. She said yes." He stepped down, then moved back from the wagon, leaving space for her to descend without his hands on her waist. "You decide everything else." Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke, coffee, saddle leather, and old quiet. The front room was clean but spare, with a stone fireplace, a long table, 2 shelves of books, and a rocking chair no one seemed to use. Abby noticed at once that the house had been kept, but not lived in with any softness. There were no flowers, no bright cloth, no bowl of apples, no shawl left over a chair. Only order. Only absence. Cole carried her valise as far as the foot of the stairs and set it down. Abby carried the tin box herself. Dr. Bell went ahead to check the upstairs room. At the end of the hallway, one door remained closed. A narrow strip of faded blue ribbon had been tied around the knob long ago, the color dulled by dust. Abby stopped before she meant to. Cole saw where she was looking. His face changed, not with anger, but with the kind of pain that had learned to stand very still. "That room stays closed," he said. Abby heard the warning and the grief beneath it. "Whose was it?" Cole looked at the ribbon. "My sister's." Dr. Bell stepped from the guest room before Abby could ask more. "This one will do. Window latch works. Door locks clean." Cole handed the key to Abby, not to the doctor. "You keep it." The small brass key lay warm against her palm, and for a second she thought of the missing key too. The tin box. One key lost. One key given. She closed her fingers around it. Later, after Dr. Bell had gone downstairs to make tea and Cole had stepped out to speak with his foreman, Abby sat alone on the edge of the bed with the tin box on her lap. The room held a washstand, a quilt, a lamp, and a chair turned toward the window. Nothing more. Yet for the first time since leaving Jasper's house, a locked door stood between her and the world because she had turned the key herself. She opened her valise and checked the box again, running her thumb over the lid, the ribbon, the small brass lock. Still closed. Still silent. A soft floorboard creaked in the hall, and Abby held her breath. It was only Cole's voice from the other side of the door, low and careful. "I am leaving bread and hot coffee on the table downstairs. I will be in the bunkhouse. Dr. Bell has the room across the hall. Why do you keep your sister's room closed?" The question escaped before fear could stop it. A pause followed, long enough for Abby to regret asking. Then Cole answered through the wood. "Because Lydia came home hurt and half the town decided not to see it. I keep the room closed because opening it means remembering every day I was too late." Abby looked at the tin box in her lap, at the bruise reflected faintly in the dark window glass, and felt something inside her shift. Jasper had made her believe the marks on her life were private shame. Cole's grief told another story. Sometimes a whole town could be guilty of looking away. "I am sorry," she whispered. "So am I," Cole said. His boots moved down the hall, then faded on the stairs. Abby sat with the key to her room in one hand and the locked tin box beneath the other. Outside, wind moved across the pasture. Inside, behind the closed door tied with Lydia's faded ribbon, the house held its breath. Abby realized then that she had not been brought to a stranger's ranch to disappear. She had been brought to a place where silence had been waiting years for someone brave enough to open it. Morning at Maddox Ranch came soft and golden, as if the sun had not heard what waited in. Mercy Creek. Abby woke before the house stirred, one hand still closed around the brass room key and the other resting on the tin box beside her pillow. For a moment she did not know where she was. Then she saw the quilt, the washstand, the chair beneath the window, and remembered that the door had stayed locked all night because she had chosen to lock it, not because someone had locked her in. That difference was small enough to fit in her palm and large enough to change the shape of her breathing. Downstairs, Dr. Bell was already at the stove, sleeves rolled, gray hair pinned high, stirring coffee as if she had been born in that kitchen. Cole stood near the back door with his hat in his hands, speaking quietly to Amos Reed, his foreman, a lean older man with kind eyes and a limp that made his steps deliberate. When Abby entered with the tin box tucked under her arm, both men stopped talking, but neither stared at her face. Amos removed his hat. "Morning, Miss Whitaker." The simple courtesy nearly made her look down. Instead, she nodded. "Good morning." There was flour on the shelf, salt in a tin, bacon wrapped in cloth, and potatoes in a crate by the pantry door. Abby's hands found work before her nerves found fear. She sliced potatoes, mixed biscuit dough, and set the table while Dr. Bell watched without interfering. Cole said once, "You do not have to earn breakfast." Abby dusted flour from her fingers. "I know." He waited. She looked at the dough beneath her hands. "I am earning myself back." No one answered, and that was the kindness of it. Over the next 3 days, Maddox Ranch began to reveal what it had been missing. Not wealth. Not labor. Tenderness. Abby cleaned the pantry because the jars had no labels and the sugar sat beside axle grease. She mended Amos's sleeve after noticing the tear caught on a nail. She made stew from beans and leftover beef, then watched the ranch hands eat in reverent silence, as if warm food were a sermon. Cole never praised her in a way that made her feel bought. He only noticed. The loose kitchen step was repaired the morning after she stumbled. A small mirror disappeared from the hallway after she avoided it twice. A rocking chair was moved near the kitchen stove when Dr. Bell said Abby should sit between chores. Still, every night, Abby took the tin box upstairs unopened. The missing key had not appeared. On the fourth day, Amos rode to a neighboring claim and returned near supper with a thin, spectacled locksmith named Mr. Pritchard, who carried a leather roll of tools and apologized 3 times before touching the box. Abby placed it on the kitchen table. Cole stood near the door, arms crossed, but when he saw her watching him, he stepped outside onto the porch so the decision would not feel crowded. Dr. Bell remained beside Abby. Mr. Pritchard worked carefully, making no jokes, asking no questions. When the lock finally clicked, Abby's breath caught so sharply the room seemed to hear it. She lifted the lid herself. Inside lay her mother's letter, a bank receipt from Ridgeland Savings, a folded inheritance paper, 2 faded photographs, and a small envelope with Lydia Maddox's name written in a hand Abby recognized from Jasper Hale's old account books. Dr. Bell drew in a quiet breath. Abby unfolded her mother's letter first. The words blurred, then steadied. My dearest Abigail, if this reaches your hands, remember that Jasper was appointed guardian only, never owner. The money from your father's land is yours when you reach 23. Do not sign away what love meant for you to have. Abby sat down slowly. 23. She had reached that age in March. Jasper had told her the estate was gone by February. Dr. Bell touched her shoulder, light enough to be refused. Abby did not refuse. Cole appeared in the doorway again, drawn by the silence. What did you find? Abby held up the bank receipt. My life, apparently. Her voice did not break, though it tried. She opened the smaller envelope next. Inside was a receipt for board and medical care, signed years earlier by Jasper Hale and marked with Lydia Maddox's name. Cole's face changed. The old grief that lived behind his eyes stepped forward. He came no farther than the threshold. May I see it? Abby handed it to Dr. Bell, who carried it to him. Cole read the paper once, then again. Lydia was in Ridgeland before she came home, he said. She never told me. Maybe she could not, Abby said softly. The words seemed to loosen something in the house. Cole looked toward the closed hallway, toward the room with the faded blue ribbon, and for the first time he did not look away quickly. That evening, they spread the papers across the kitchen table, Abby's inheritance document, the bank receipt, her mother's letter, the Lydia receipt, and the telegram accusing her of theft. What had felt like scattered scraps became a road. Jasper had not only lied about Abby's money. He had known Lydia Maddox. He had paid for something in Ridgeland and hidden it. The tin box was not just Abby's defense. It might also be the first clear light on the silence that had haunted Cole's house for years. Near dusk, a rider appeared on the south trail, then a buggy behind him, moving hard toward the ranch. Amos stepped onto the porch and shaded his eyes. That is Deputy Cole, he called. And Jasper Hale with him. Abby gathered the papers with hands steadier than she expected. The fear was there, yes, but it no longer had the room to itself. Cole reached for his hat. You can stay inside. Abby closed the tin box and placed it on the table. No, he turned to her. She lifted the box in both hands. If this box belongs to him, then he will not mind the sheriff reading it aloud. Outside, the buggy stopped in a cloud of dust. Jasper Hale stepped down in a dark traveling coat, smooth-faced, polished, and smiling as if Maddox Ranch were already his courtroom. Abigail, he called toward the porch, you have caused a great deal of trouble. Abby walked to the doorway with the tin box against her chest. Cole stood beside her, close enough to be strength, far enough to let the choice remain hers. No, she said, her voice carrying across the yard. I carried the trouble here so everyone could finally see it. Jasper Hale looked exactly as Abby remembered, and nothing like the monster her fear had made of him. That was the worst of it. He was neat, gray-coated, clean-shaven, with polished boots and a soft brown hat held respectfully in both hands, the sort of man a town would trust before it trusted the woman who had run from him. He stood beside Deputy Martin Cole in the yard of Maddox Ranch, his face arranged into sorrow so carefully that Abby almost hated him more for the performance than for the years behind it. "Abigail," he said, voice smooth as cream poured over poison, "you have frightened half of Ridgeland and now dragged respectable people into a family matter." Abby stayed on the porch with the tin box held against her chest. Cole Maddox stood one step to her left, silent and still. Dr. Bell stood in the doorway behind her, and Amos Reed had come from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag, his eyes narrowed beneath his hat brim. Deputy Cole looked uncomfortable, glancing from Jasper's papers to Abby's face and then to the box. "Mr. Hale claims the item in your possession contains estate documents belonging to him," the deputy said. "He has also filed a debt claim for travel expenses, lodging, and household funds allegedly taken without permission." Abby felt the old panic rise, but this time it met the weight of her mother's letter in the box and did not swallow her whole. "He is lying." Jasper sighed as if her words caused him pain. "You see, Deputy, this is what I tried to explain. My stepfather took her in after her parents died, and when responsibility passed to me, I did my best. But Abigail has always been impressionable, emotional, easily led by anyone who gives her attention." His eyes flicked toward Cole Maddox, then toward the mark fading on Abby's cheek. "And she has learned how to invite sympathy." The yard went terribly quiet. Abby's fingers tightened on the tin box until the edge pressed into her palms. There it was. The same trick as always. Make her pain sound like a tool. Make her fear sound like guilt. Make her body into evidence against her instead of evidence that someone should have cared. Cole shifted beside her, barely, but Abby saw the anger move through him like heat under iron. He did not speak. He had promised with his silence that this moment would belong to her if she wanted it. Jasper gave him a thin smile. "Surely even you can see the risk, Mr. Maddox." A woman appears in town marked up, confused, holding stolen papers, and within hours she is under your roof. People will wonder what story she told to earn such protection. Dr. Bell stepped forward. "Careful, Mr. Hale." Jasper inclined his head. "Doctor, I respect your profession. But you have known the young woman a day." "I have known her since girlhood." Abby looked at him then, truly looked, and realized how small he appeared when she was not hearing him from behind a locked door. He needed the deputy's papers, the town's assumptions, the language of debt and guardianship, because without them he was only a man afraid of what sat inside a tin box. She walked down the porch steps. Cole's hand moved as if to help, then stopped before reaching her. She descended on her own. The dust in the yard was warm beneath the hem of her dress. "You say the box belongs to you," she said. Jasper's mouth tightened. "It contains family records." "My family? Your father trusted my father. Then me. My mother trusted paper more than men who explain too much." Amos made a low sound that might have been approval. Abby placed the tin box on the small porch table Cole used for sorting tack repairs. The ribbon around it stirred in the breeze. "Deputy," she said, "the box has been opened in the presence of Dr. Bell, Mr. Maddox, and Mr. Reed. Inside are my mother's letter, bank receipts, my inheritance paper, and a receipt bearing Lydia Maddox's name signed by Jasper Hale." Jasper's polished calm broke for the first time. Only a crack, but Abby saw it. "That is private. So was my life before you turned it into a claim." Deputy Cole frowned. "Lydia Maddox?" Cole Maddox's voice came low from the porch. "My sister." The deputy looked sharply at him. Jasper lifted one hand. "An old receipt proves nothing. It concerns a charitable arrangement made years ago for a troubled young woman. Dragging her name into this is cruel." Cole's jaw tightened, but still he did not step forward. Abby understood what that cost him. She turned to the deputy. "If this box belongs to him, then he will not mind the sheriff reading it aloud." Jasper's eyes hardened. "You do not understand what you are doing." Abby almost laughed, not because anything was funny, but because he had said that so many times in so many rooms, when she asked about the bank, when she refused to sign a blank paper, when she packed her valise, when she took the box. You do not understand. What he meant was, you are not meant to understand. I understand enough, she said. I understand my mother left money in my name. I understand I turned 23 in March. I understand you told me in February there was nothing left. I understand you accused me of theft because you were afraid I would open this box before someone who could read more than your version of the truth. Deputy Cole folded Jasper's claim papers slowly, no longer looking certain. Sheriff Rusk will need to review this. Jasper's tone sharpened. Deputy, you came here to retrieve stolen property. I came here to hear both sides. Then hear mine first. I have been hearing yours since the telegram. The deputy looked at Abby. Miss Whitaker, will you bring the box to the sheriff's office in Mercy Creek? Her throat tightened at the thought of returning to the same street where men had laughed, where Silas Brandt had turned her bruise into entertainment. But Cole's words from the day before came back to her. When you come back, you will not come back alone. She lifted the box from the table. Yes. Jasper's face changed again, smoothing too fast. This is unnecessary. We can settle quietly. Abby held the box closer. Quiet is where you kept me. Dr. Bell came down the steps and stood beside her. Amos moved toward the horses. Cole finally descended from the porch, stopping several feet from Abby, his voice meant for her alone. You choose the road. Abby looked toward Mercy Creek, where the sheriff's office waited, and beyond it the saloon porch, the mercantile, the faces that had decided who she was before asking. Her hands trembled, but they did not open. Then I choose to go back, she said. And this time, Jasper will not be the only one speaking. The ride back to Mercy Creek felt longer than 8 miles, though the wagon wheels followed the same road Abby had taken the night before. Morning light lay pale over the Colorado hills, and the dust lifted in soft yellow clouds behind the horses. Abby sat on the bench with the tin box in her lap, her fingers resting over the lid, while Dr. Bell sat on her other side and Cole Maddox rode beside the wagon on his bay gelding. Deputy Martin Cole and Jasper Hale followed in the buggy, close enough that Abby could feel Jasper's eyes on the back of her bonnet even when she did not turn. The town came into view just before noon, all wooden storefronts, hitching rails, and watching windows. Mercy Creek looked smaller in daylight, but Abby's body remembered it as larger. The saloon porch, the laughing men, the mercantile door she had not reached, the sheriff's office where a telegram had tried to name her before she named herself. This time, when the wagon stopped, she climbed down without waiting for help. Cole dismounted nearby, close but not crowding. Silas Brandt stood outside the saloon, his red face less merry than before. When Abby's eyes met his, he looked away first. That small thing gave her enough strength to carry the box across the street. Sheriff Daniel Rusk had returned and turned his office into a crowded hearing room. He was a broad, gray-bearded man with tired eyes and a plain manner that did not waste words. Deputy Cole laid Jasper's claim on the desk. Jasper removed his hat and arranged his expression into sorrow again. Sheriff, I regret deeply that my family's private hardship has become town gossip, he began. Miss Whitaker is confused, influenced by strangers, and in possession of documents she took without right. Abby stood before the desk, the box held in both hands. Cole remained near the wall beside Amos Reed, hat in hand. Dr. Bell stood to Abby's right. Not one of them spoke for her. Sheriff Rusk looked at Abby. Miss Whitaker, do you wish to answer? Her throat tightened, but her voice came. Yes, sir. I wish for the box to be read. Jasper stepped forward. That box contains sensitive family records. Then you should be pleased to have the law handle them carefully, Dr. Bell said. Sheriff Rusk took the box only after Abby nodded. He opened it on the desk and removed the papers one at a time. The first was her mother's letter. He read it silently at first, then aloud when Abby asked him. 2. The room heard the words her mother had left for her. Jasper was guardian only, never owner. The land money belonged to Abigail at 23. No man had the right to make her sign away what love had set aside. Abby watched Jasper while the words filled the room. His jaw tightened once. That was all, but it was enough. Sheriff Rusk unfolded the bank receipt next. Ridgeland Savings, he read. Deposit from the sale of Whitaker land, held in trust for Abigail Whitaker until March 18, 1878. He looked up. You turned 23 in March? Yes, sir. Jasper answered before she could say more. There were debts against the household. The sheriff lifted the inheritance paper. This says otherwise. Deputy Cole shifted behind the desk. The claim Mr. Hale filed states the estate was exhausted in February. It was not, Abby said. He told me it was. He told me there was nothing but obligation left. Jasper gave a tight smile. Because household accounts are complicated, Abigail. You never had a head for business. Abby looked down at the desk, at her mother's handwriting, then back at him. You made sure of that by keeping the books locked. Silence moved across the room. Sheriff Rusk took out the final receipt. Lydia Maddox, he said. Cole Maddox went still by the wall. Even the sheriff seemed to feel the name change the air. Payment received for lodging and care, Ridgeland House, signed Jasper Hale. Jasper's composure thinned. An old charitable matter. Cole's voice came quiet, but it carried. My sister came home from Ridgeland and would not speak of where she had been. Sheriff Rusk turned the receipt over. There is a note here. Balance transferred to J. Hale for discretion. The word discretion seemed to darken the room. Abby looked at Cole and saw grief harden into something cleaner than anger. Understanding. Jasper lifted his chin. You cannot build a charge from old sorrow and a woman's accusations. Dr. Bell stepped forward. Then build it from mine. I examined Miss Whitaker. I saw a woman in fear, not confusion. And I heard Mr. Hale use her condition as a way to discredit her before he even answered the papers. Amos Reed raised his hand from the back. I saw Miss Whitaker at the ranch. She never asked for money, never hid the box, and asked for the sheriff to read it. That does not sound like theft. Another voice came from the doorway. The woman from the mercantile, the one who had watched in silence the day before, stood with both hands on her basket. I saw Silas and the others laugh at her. I said nothing. Her eyes moved to Abby. I should have. Silas Brandt, brought in by the gathering crowd, stared at his boots. Sheriff Rusk closed the papers into a careful stack. Mr. Hale, until Judge Mercer arrives from Denver to review the estate claim, you will remain in town and surrender any related account books to this office. Jasper's face lost its practiced sorrow. Sheriff, surely you are not detaining me over a family misunderstanding. No, the sheriff said. I am holding a man who filed a theft claim while the property in question appears to belong to the woman he accused. Abby let out a breath she did not know she had held. Jasper looked toward her, and the old command was still in his eyes, but it no longer reached her. She stood straighter. You said I was trouble, she told him softly. You were right. I am the kind that comes when the truth stops being afraid of you. Sheriff Rusk nodded to Deputy Cole. Secure the papers. Then he looked at Abby. Miss Whitaker, the box stays here as evidence if you agree. Abby looked at Cole Maddox. He gave no instruction, only waited. She turned back to the sheriff. I agree. Outside, the afternoon sun fell across the saloon porch where the laughter had started. This time, when Abby stepped onto the boardwalk, no one laughed. Silas Brandt stood by the post, hat in hand, his face red for a different reason. Cole Maddox came out behind her, leaving enough space for her to walk first. Abby looked down the street, no longer seeing only the place where she had been shamed, but the place where shame had begun to change hands. Judge Henry Mercer arrived from Denver 2 days later with a black leather case, a gray beard, and the kind of eyes that made men choose their words carefully. Mercy Creek gathered in the sheriff's office and spilled out onto the boardwalk because word had traveled faster than the stagecoach. Jasper Hale's theft claim had turned into an estate hearing, and the woman men had laughed at was going to stand in the same town with her face uncovered. Abby Whitaker stood near the sheriff's desk in her faded gray calico dress, her high collar still buttoned, her chestnut hair pinned beneath a plain bonnet. The mark along her cheek had softened to yellow at the edges, but she did not hide it with powder or a veil. If Mercy Creek wanted to look, then this time they would look at the whole truth, not the piece that amused them. Cole Maddox stood along the wall beside Amos Reed, hat in hand, silent as a fence post in a storm. Dr. Bell stood near Abby's shoulder, and Sheriff Rusk placed the tin box on the desk between the judge and Jasper Hale. Jasper wore the same careful dignity he had worn at the ranch, but the room had changed around him. Papers lay open. Witnesses were present. Abby was no longer alone with his voice. Judge Mercer examined the inheritance paper first, then the bank receipt, then the letter from Abby's mother. He asked dates. Abby answered. He asked whether she had signed any transfer of the estate after turning 23. She said no. He asked Jasper for the household account books he had been ordered to surrender. Jasper produced one ledger, thin and neat. Sheriff Rusk produced two more from Jasper's travel trunk, discovered after the deputy saw fresh ink drying on a page. A murmur moved through the room. Judge Mercer compared the entries and said nothing for several long minutes. That silence did more damage than accusation. Finally, he looked over his spectacles. Mr. Hale, this ledger records a withdrawal from Miss Whitaker's trust in April, 1 month after she came of age. Where is her signature of consent? Jasper's mouth tightened. She was under my care. The funds were used for her support. That was not my question. Jasper looked toward Abby, and for one breath, she felt the old command in his eyes. Be quiet, be grateful, be small. She took a breath and stayed standing. He told me the estate was gone in February, she said. He said there was nothing but debt left. Judge Mercer turned another page. Yet the bank receipt shows a balance in March. Deputy Cole read from the second ledger. And a transfer in April to Hale Holdings. Sheriff Rusk's face hardened. Dr. Bell's lips pressed thin. Cole Maddox did not move, but his hand closed around the brim of his hat. Jasper lifted his chin. A woman with no business training can misunderstand accounts. Abby stepped forward before the judge could answer for her. No, she said. You made sure I had no training, then called my ignorance proof that you should keep control. The words came steadier than she expected. You locked the books, hid my mother's letter, and told me asking questions made me ungrateful. When I left with the box, you called it theft because you were afraid the papers would call it truth. The room stayed still. Then Judge Mercer lifted the receipt marked with Lydia Maddox's name. And this. Jasper's face changed in the smallest way. Cole saw it. Abby saw Cole see it. Old Charity, Jasper said. A private matter. Cole's voice came from the wall, low but clear. Lydia Maddox was my sister. Judge Mercer looked to him. Cole stepped forward only when Abby turned and gave a slight nod. She came home from Ridgeland with a paper she would not explain and a silence that never left her. If Jasper Hale paid for her lodging, I want to know why her name was entered under discretion and balance transfer. Jasper's polished mask slipped further. Your grief is not evidence. No, Cole said. But your signature is. The judge took the receipt back and placed it with the others. This court will review the Lydia Maddox matter separately. For today, the Whitaker estate is clear enough. Silas Brandt had been summoned to stand near the door, and now Sheriff Rusk turned to him. Mr. Brandt, you were present when Miss Whitaker arrived. Silas swallowed. Without the saloon porch under him and laughter around him, he looked less like a bully than a man hoping not to be seen. Yes, Sheriff. You publicly mocked her condition? His red face deepened. I made a poor joke. Abby turned toward him. The room seemed to draw back from the space between them. She did not raise her voice. You laughed because it was easier than asking who hurt me. Silas looked down. I was wrong, Miss Whitaker. The apology did not erase the day, but it changed where the shame belonged. Abby accepted it with a nod, not because he deserved comfort, but because she was done carrying what was his. Judge Mercer closed the estate papers. Jasper Hale, you are removed from any authority over Miss Whitaker's property. The funds taken from her trust will be restored under court supervision. You will remain in Sheriff Rusk's custody pending charges for false claim, misappropriation, and sworn misrepresentation. Jasper stood too fast. This is outrageous. Sheriff Rusk stepped beside him. Sit down. Jasper sat. Not because the sheriff was louder, but because the room had stopped believing him. Cole Maddox came to Abby then, not touching her, not claiming the victory, only standing near enough that she could feel the quiet steadiness of him. His eyes moved once to the fading mark on her face, then to the men who had once made it a spectacle. "Her pain was never your entertainment," he said. "And her healing will not need your permission." No one answered. Outside, the afternoon light lay across Mercy Creek's dusty street. Sheriff Rusk handed Abby a folded copy of the judge's order, the key to the tin box, and a written note confirming her restored inheritance. Cole waited until they were alone near the wagon before offering one more envelope. Inside was a stagecoach ticket, paid in full, and enough cash for the road. Abby looked up at him. "What is this?" "A choice," he said. "Maddox Ranch has room for you. So does any road you decide to take." Abby held the ticket while the town moved quietly around them, no longer laughing, no longer certain what to do with the woman who had stood upright after being lowered. She looked toward the road out of Mercy Creek, then toward the hills where Maddox Ranch waited, the locked room, the warm kitchen, the silence ready to be opened. "I am not leaving today," she said. Cole nodded. "Then I will drive you back." Abby folded the ticket and kept it close. She did not know yet what tomorrow would ask of her, but for the first time, the answer would be hers. Within 3 weeks, Mercy Creek learned the difference between a rumor and a record. Judge Henry Mercer sent for the Ridgeland bank books, the Hale ledgers, and the old boarding receipts tied to Lydia Maddox's name, and every paper that arrived made Jasper Hale's fine coat look cheaper. The bank confirmed that Abigail Whitaker's inheritance had not vanished before her birthday, as Jasper claimed. It had been moved after she turned 23, without her consent, into accounts he controlled. The debt claim he filed against her was struck from the record, the accusation of theft was dismissed in writing, and the tin box was returned to Abby not as evidence against her, but as proof that she had saved herself when no one else knew how. Sheriff Rusk arrested Jasper on charges of false claim, misappropriation of trust funds, and sworn misrepresentation. Jasper did not disappear into some convenient darkness. He stood in front of the same town he had tried to fool while Deputy Martin Cole read the charges aloud. The polished sorrow was gone from his face then. What remained was smaller, colder, and far less convincing. His accounts were seized, his authority over Abby's property was permanently removed, and the court ordered restitution from every dollar he had taken from the Whitaker estate. When the territorial marshal carried him away to await trial in Denver, no one stepped forward to defend him. Not even Silas Brandt, who had learned that a man could lose a town without leaving it. Silas lost more than laughter that month. The church committee removed him from the charity board, the mercantile women stopped extending credit to his saloon, and when he tried to make light of it, Sheriff Rusk told him that Mercy Creek had heard enough of his jokes. Silas finally stood before Abby outside the mercantile, hat in both hands, and apologized without an audience to perform for. Abby did not smile. She did not tell him it was all forgotten. She simply said, "Let the next woman who comes through this town find you silent if you cannot be kind." That was all the mercy she owed him. The day her restored inheritance papers arrived, Cole Maddox drove Abby into town in the same wagon that had carried her away from danger. This time she sat upright, the tin box beside her, the stagecoach ticket still folded in her reticule. At the sheriff's office, Judge Mercer handed her the final order. The Whitaker funds would be transferred to an account under her name alone. The Hale claim was void, and no man living had legal hold over her person, property, or future. Abby took the paper and felt its weight pass through her hands into her spine. For years, Jasper had told her she survived because he allowed it. Now the law, the town, and the truth all said otherwise. Outside, Mercy Creek waited in the pale afternoon sun. Cole stood near the wagon, one hand on the rail, watching her with that same careful distance that had first made her distrust him and then, slowly, made her believe. He had not asked for her answer. He had given her the ticket. He had given her the road. Abby walked to the wagon, then stopped before climbing in. "I could leave today," she said. Cole nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I could go east or south or anywhere my money will carry me. You could. The town had gone quiet around them, not because anyone had commanded it, but because people sensed that something more important than gossip was being spoken. Abby took the ticket from her reticule and held it between them. I am not staying because I have nowhere to run. Her voice shook once, then steadied. I am staying because I finally know the difference between being kept and being welcomed. I choose Maddox Ranch. I choose the kitchen with the crooked shelf, the pasture road, Dr. Bell's stubborn tea, Amos complaining about my biscuits while eating 6 of them, and the room with Lydia's ribbon, because I think it should have light in it again. And Cole, if you will have me as a woman with her own name, her own money, and her own say, then I choose to stay beside you. Cole's eyes lowered for a moment, as if the words had struck somewhere too deep for quick answer. Then he removed his hat before her and before the town. Abigail Whittaker, he said, his voice carrying across the boardwalk, I do not choose you because you needed saving. I choose you because you stood when this town expected you to bow. I do not own you, and I never will. I would be honored to walk beside the woman who owns herself. No one laughed. No one dared reduce the moment into a joke. Dr. Bell wiped at one eye and pretended it was dust. Amos looked toward the sky as if the clouds had suddenly become fascinating. Abby placed the stagecoach ticket into the tin box and closed the lid, not to bury the road, but to remember that she had been free to take it. She stepped into the wagon by herself, and Cole drove her home. They did not marry that day. Abby would not let the story end at rescue, and Cole would not rush what deserved roots. Through spring and summer, she rebuilt her life with both hands. She learned the ranch accounts until even Amos admitted she could find a missing dollar faster than any man in the county. She opened Lydia's room on a Sunday afternoon with Cole standing in the hall and Dr. Bell beside her. They washed the curtains, folded the old dresses, set a quilt across the bed, and placed an oil lamp on the table. Abby tied the faded blue ribbon around a new curtain hook instead of the doorknob. That room became a quiet refuge for any woman passing through Mercy Creek who needed a locked door, a clean dress, a hot meal, and a night without questions. 1 year later, the first sunrise of June spilled gold across Maddox Ranch. Abby stood on the porch in a soft blue calico dress, a plain wedding ring warm on her hand, watching Cole carry firewood toward the kitchen while Amos argued with a young ranch hand near the barn. From inside the house came the smell of coffee, biscuits, and apple preserves. Dr. Bell's buggy waited by the fence after bringing a mother and 2 children safely through a hard night on the road. The old valise sat beneath the hall table, polished now, no longer a shield but a reminder. The tin box rested above it, holding the ticket Abby never used, her mother's letter, and the first page of the Maddox Ranch Refuge Ledger. Cole came up the porch steps and paused beside her, shoulder close but not crowding. You all right? He asked. Abby looked toward the pasture where sunlight moved over the grass, then back at the house glowing behind them. Once, a town had looked at her bruises and decided they were shame. Now women came to her door and found light. She slipped her hand into Cole's, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. I am home, she said, and this time the word did not mean a place that held her. It meant a life she had chosen, a love that respected her, and a future bright enough to leave the lamp burning for anyone still finding their way.